Desert Springs. So today we got a pretty good little video here. My life is kind of coming back into the swing of things. I'm getting back into the swing of things, and I've had so much shit going on. It's just been insane. I do this horrible thing where I just work until everything is done. And it's not a great way of working. It sounds like a great way of working, but the thing is, I don't stop. I tend not to stop until stuff is done. And so that ends up with me, waking up at 8 a.m. and not quitting till, midnight, 2 a.m., waking up the next morning, 8 a.m., and just kind of killing my body to try to get a bunch of shit done. So today I decided I was going to respect my body a little bit, let it have a break, and I'm trying this new thing that I'm not going to think about work or do any more work after 9:30 at night. If it's after 9:30 at night, I don't do any more work. We'll see how long that lasts because I damn near I'm I'm really tempted to go right back outside right now, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. But the gate's got a problem, and I've just figured out a solution for it, and I'm curious to see if my solution's going to work for it. And so I really want to go out there, but it's 10 o'clock at goddamn night. Like, dude, worry about it tomorrow morning. But I'll probably end up fucking with it after this video. But anyways, so I'm trying to learn to relax. That was a big problem in my marriage. Learning to relax. Still learning how to relax. So, oh well. This is what we got today. So, this camera, it's always kind of weird. It's always a little wonky. The Bible made me an atheist. Lost my faith in Bible college. Christian apologetics is a joke. My entire deconstruction timeline. So this is Hellbound Housewife by the Hellbound Housewife. I love this topic so much because when I was chatting with my sister, she's a missionary. Oh, funny story. I told somebody I was a Christian 2 days ago. I was working and I was in this person's house doing a job, and clients want to chat with me. That's fine. I'm not gonna, I enjoy chatting with a person. As long as we stay off of touchy topics, it doesn't bother me at all. But this person asks me if I'm a man of faith, and I already know where this conversation's going. I have no interest in going down that road. I have no interest in going down that conversation. It was one of those things where it's like, you tell a lie thinking that that'll be the end of it, and then you got to keep building on it. And I was just like, and then something really crazy happened. So obviously I'm not gonna disclose any of the client's information, but or their name or any of that. But we won't talk about the situation. It was super funny. So I was working on their refrigerator, and he goes, "Are you a man of faith?" And I'm just sensing, if I say no, I'm not a man of faith. I'm not the people that I'm doing this job for. So contract with the company. Oh, anyways, the people in this establishment are missionaries, and so I'm afraid that if I say no, I'm gonna have to hear the fucking lecture. So I decide yes is just gonna be the fastest way to just get back to work. So I tell them, yeah, I am. Great. What denomination? Oh, God, this fucking shit again. Does it matter? Does it fucking matter? Yes, to them it matters. Okay. And, casually across the room, I noticed that they were Baptist. So I was like, oh, I'm Baptist. And they're like, oh, okay, that's great. And then they kept prodding. And I'm like, oh, my God, what now? What church do you go to? And I'm just like, oh, I go to one in the Woodlands, because I do go to one of the Woodlands. I go to one of those little spiritual gatherings in the Woodlands. I really like those places. They're really, it's very loving, accepting of everybody. There's no, you just show up as yourself and you're loved completely, and I love that. And so I'm just like, oh, I go to the Woodlands. where in the Woodlands? And I'm just like, what's the name of the church? And I'm like, oh fuck. And I'm like, Woodlands Baptist. So, uh, so here I am digging a fucking pit, and and so yeah. Anyways, after I said that, they're I've never heard of that church. I'm like, yeah, me neither. And so thank God that was kind of the end of that. But I was able to kind of fucking move the conversation on to something else. Like, goddamn. And so they have an errand they got to go run. And I'm, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from being done with what I'm doing. And I hear the guy in the back. Mind you, the way this man, these are missionaries. The way this man treats his wife is just shameful. It's just shameful, Don't treat your wife like a second-class citizen. Like, that's some church bullshit. Don't do that. So I'm sitting there and I hear the wife say, honey, we got to go do this, but what are we going to do? The repairman's here. And the guy says, oh, don't worry about him. He's Christian. We'll be okay. And I'm just like, what the fuck? No. I forgot to say that. I forgot the first thing. Whenever the first question he asked me, I was like, are you a man of faith? And I was like, sure, yeah, And then he asked me, are you Baptist? And I said I was Baptist, and he was like, I sensed that about you. And I'm like, well, your senses are really fucking off. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But if you were a sensor on any sort of machine, I definitely want to replace it. Anyways, long story short, it was just kind of funny because I was kind of shocked that, I have people leave me in their homes unattended all the time. It doesn't bother me. I'm an honest person. But and I've been accused of taking things before in the past, and it is kind of funny. I always just ask them to call me back whenever they are ready to apologize. That way I can get my whole closure of the situation. And typically it's about a week later or something like that. They'll call me back and they'll be like, oh, we found that thing that we accused you of stealing. I'm like, yeah, I know you'd find it eventually. But yeah, so the reason why this topic is so funny to me is because my sister, she is not a missionary. I wouldn't classify her as a missionary, because you typically classify missionaries as like people who go overseas. She's not a person who goes overseas, although she has gone overseas to do mission work before. She's not a like all the way out there deep in the woods of Papua New Guinea, sleeping on cots. Like, that's what I consider a missionary. Anywho, I had a conversation with her, and she went to Bible college, and I remember asking her, I don't know how we got on the topic, but eventually I got to the topic jeez. We got on the topic of if she was going to send her kids to Bible college or encourage her kids to go to Bible college. And she was like, no, I don't want my kids to go to Bible college. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why wouldn't you want them to go to Bible college? Like, what the fuck? And she told me, she was like, well, I don't want them to go to Bible college because I don't want them to lose their faith. And I'm like, the whole point of Bible college is going to college to study the Bible. Why wouldn't you want that? And she was like, well, no, it's just because a lot of people, when you start actually studying the historicity of the Bible and a lot of the books surrounding the Bible and how the Bible came about to be, it's very easy to lose your faith in Christianity. And I'm like, do you hear yourself right now? Like, do you hear yourself? I'm just like, this has been my point all along, sis. But anyways, curious about this girl's story, so let's go ahead and get into it. It's a 30-minute long video, and so I am going to speed it up just a touch. Just a little bit. Boom, 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 boom.
Many people have lost faith in Bible college, seminary, and divinity school because they learned about the Bible. Many people seem to think that there is one specific event or reason that caused me to leave Christianity and turn into an atheist. In reality, deconstruction is a complex process that takes place over the course of several years. I am going to break down my deconstruction process in the form of a timeline. I have just over 20 years worth of things to break down, so I think a timeline is going to be a really great tool for this. This is going to be a simplified overview of this process.
So I do want to make it a little bit clear here. So she's deconstructed to atheism. I have not deconstructed to atheism. I deconstructed to atheism for a little bit, for a period of maybe a year to 2 years, something like that. But I kept researching, and eventually I came across my researching of plants. And that's what's kind of changed my mind on everything. And so I still do believe that there is some sort of conscious force out there. I do, I wouldn't call it God. I think God's the wrong name for it. I think Einstein was more correct whenever he said a cosmic consciousness. But I do think that there is some sort of, at minimum, something very, metaphysical that we just don't understand how that process works. And if you're curious about that, I am eventually, guys. I'm busy. I'm sorry. I've wanted to do this for the longest damn time, but the list of things that I have to do is eternal, and it grows every day, and it is about to make me blow a head gasket. But yeah, eventually I do want to go into a lot of my own research in what I've done, and I kind of want to make like a series of videos, kind of like a part 1, 2, 3, not like a part 1, 2, 3, but just kind of like a video. I hesitate to call it a course, but just like a, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, just kind of like the way that I've gone, the research that I've done, the data that I've seen, and of course my own experiences, which, I never try to push those on everybody because some people have personal experiences, other people have zero personal experiences. Why that is, I'm not 100% sure. I think it has to do with openness and kind of putting yourself in that environment, right? Like a lot of my experiences was me actively going out way into the Alaskan wilderness in the middle of winter at 3 o'clock in the morning, completely by myself, 150 miles away from the nearest human being. So, that's a bit dramatic. You don't have to do that. But the deserts of Arizona are just as great of a place if you do ever get the urge, or the deserts of Las Vegas, if you ever do get Las Vegas, of Nevada, my bad. If you ever do get the urge to just go see if you can experience things. And that's the thing. You don't know, right? You just don't know. You go out there with certain knowledge about how things work as far as out in the cosmos, and then you go stargazing. I've done an absolute ton of stargazing. I love stargazing. It's right. Oh my God. I could do that shit. I don't want to be a fucking no, that's the wrong word. I was going to say astrologer. Astronomer? Don't know enough about science to know that word. So, but anyways, I'm not interested in all that kind of stuff. But, I do have a telescope, and I do enjoy going out and looking at stars. And I've experienced a lot of things whenever I was out stargazing. So if you never go stargazing, or if you live inside of a city with really, really bad light pollution where you never, ever see the universe, then, you got to put yourself in a position, if you have dreams of shooting, not to get all gory and shit, but if you're a hunter and you have dreams of shooting an elk, you're not going to shoot an elk if you're hunting in Florida, right? Or you're not going to shoot a elk if you're hunting in the Bahamas. You've got to go to where the elk are. And that's all I'll say about that. But anyways, so I do kind of want to create that kind of series, I guess. Series would be a better word to use. So, anyways, back to this.
I plan to make more in-depth videos on each of these major timeline points in the future, so consider this a sort of sneak peek into the content that I have planned for the channel. This timeline starts in ye old 1999, when I was born. I was born into a Baptist family, so I was raised in the Baptist tradition. I have an entire video that goes into detail about specific things, but I would actually say that video was more of an introductory.
I was also born Baptist. I wasn't born Baptist, all right? I was fucking born, and then my family decided that I should be Baptist because they wanted to go to a Baptist church. I was born and I existed, and then these guys made me fucking Baptist. Just making that abundantly clear.
Look into the inner workings of different Baptist groups. Around 2008, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. See this video for more about that terrible experience. Fast forward to 2011,
June 6th, 2002, because they told me to fucking memorize that date, because that was the date I got saved. Gosh.
am in middle school.
Little do I know I never needed saving. They convinced me that I needed to be saved, and then told me that I should remember this date because this was the date that I made the right decision. I never needed to make any goddamn decision. I simply existed, and that was enough. But they had to throw all this bullshit, right?
And I remember sitting in math class one day. I'd finished my assignment, so I'm just sitting there, and I remember thinking, I think my religion is made up. There are so many things that don't make logical sense, and I don't think this is really real. I did not talk about my doubts with anyone because I was not in a safe enough environment to do that. See my last video. From 2012 to 2017, I attended a private fundamentalist Christian school where I began to fall deeper into Christianity, specifically Christian fundamentalism. In 2016, I met and started dating my husband. We met through a missionary Baptist church, and then we eventually both started attending the independent fundamental Baptist church associated with my private school.
Oh God, that's the one that I went to. Independent, fundamental, literalist, Bible-believing Baptist. That's what they're fucking pastor all the goddamn time. You guys, when they ask you if you're a Christian, don't say yes. Say that you're an independent, fundamentalist, Bible-believing. God damn. It's like, dude, all I asked was what frickin', it's like saying, oh, what kind of car do you drive? And it's like going down the whole list of fucking parts and engine components. And it's like the 2ZRFE, like for freaking Yodas. And it's like, okay, I didn't need all that fucking information. I'm just asking if you drive a car kind of thing.
Pressured by the youth pastor, who was also the principal of the school, to start attending the school's church instead of our family churches. And that perpetuated my journey into strict fundamentalism. I often look back on that experience and think if I wasn't pressured in that way, then I probably wouldn't have ever fallen deep into fundamentalist ideology. In 2017, I began to work in the Christian school while I was still a student. I will, of course, be doing a full video about the issue with this experience. I also got engaged to my husband at the end of 2017, so I was then 18 years old. My husband was also 18. I am 3 weeks older than him, so even back then, we liked
Didn't
to
I get
joke
married in
that I was the
2017?
older
I think I
one.
got
Young
married
marriage
in
is extremely
2017.
common in fundamentalist Christianity. I'll be unpacking that in the future. We also started attending Bible college together during our engagement. This puts us in 2018 or thereabouts. Our church ran an unaccredited Bible college. It was not a scholarly institution that valued the historicity of the Bible.
Those are always the worst colleges, man. I'll go ahead and call them out. There's a college, Bob Jones University. I want to say Pensacola may be another one. But I don't know if they're accredited now. They could be accredited now, but they're just scams for colleges, man. I mean, you go over there as a Christian person wanting to study the Bible, and you get a bullshit degree that's not actually going to help you. If you're 18 and you have, you don't have any skills, you don't know anything, do you want to go to college? That's irrelevant. You need to do something, to figure out a way to make money in this world. Maybe go to a trade school, maybe become an apprentice. If you want to go to college, okay. But you need to figure out some sort of way to make money first. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people graduate with a bachelor's degree in Bible college, and it took them 5 years to get their bachelor's degree from Bible college, just to come back and not be able to do anything and have to start off as a freshman because the college that they went to is not accredited. And the degree that they got was a bullshit degree in like biblical literature. Okay, what are you going to do with that? You're going to serve in the church? You could have done that shit for free. Let's be real. You didn't, because the church isn't going to pay you anyway. Most of these people who are working at these churches are only getting, $17,000 a year, maybe $20,000 a year. They're paying dog crap, right? So you're not going to afford a living working at a church unless the church is also providing you with housing and meals, right? Which some of them do. But yeah, it's just a really kind of sad situation. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen people graduate with their bachelor's degrees from these non-accredited biblical universities, and then they have to go right back to school for an actual degree, for an associate's or a bachelor's or whatever. And so I've seen some people in school for 8-9 years just to get a bachelor's degree in engineering, because there was one guy in our church growing up. He went and he got an engineering degree from this non-accredited university, and he couldn't get a job anywhere because he got it from a non-accredited university. So he ended up going back to college, to a secular college, or in other words, any other goddamn college, and he got his same engineering degree. So he went to college for 9 years and took on 9 years of college debt just to become a basic engineer. And I think it was doing like mechanical engineering or civil engineering or something like that. But think about it. That's absolute high school robbery. High school robbery. Highway robbery. I mean, it's insane. It is insane. And why these institutions still exist, I think they can exist. That's fine. The fact that so many Christians like leave Christianity after attending these things is not really a problem. But there should be like this blaring sign out front that says, after you get your bachelor's degree, you're going to be the exact same spot living at your mom's house, because you're not going to be able to find a job with our degrees. So you'll have to go right back to school, to a real school. Like, that should realistically be something that they're kind of forced to do, I think.
The sole purpose of the college was to prepare people for ministry within that specific church. It was a place to teach a very narrow view of the Bible, and everything was interpreted through the framework of the independent fundamental Baptist tradition. It was not an unbiased study of the Bible. It was taking a preconceived narrative and finding ways to twist the Bible to fit that narrative. People who want to work in ministry, typically, that would be male preachers and pastors, will attend seminary or Bible college to get an education, usually an accredited college, and they will learn the very basic surface level things about Greek and Hebrew translation. And while they're often told they are learning the historical context of the Bible, and may indeed learn some of it, my understanding is that they're really not getting the full extent of that context. Let's break this down. The Bible is actually not one book. It is many books compiled together. There have been books of scripture over time that people decided not to include in the Bible. There is no one book of the Bible. It's a compilation, kind of like an anthology of short stories or poems. So because of this, each book of the Bible has its own context. Books of the Bible were written by different people in different times. So the book of Genesis does not have the same context.
On top of that, a lot of the books of the Bible, the exact author is just unknown. Nobody knows who wrote these books. And so that's also a problem, right? Because they're using this idea that, that we're using we're allowing the church, we've decided that this is correct, all this kind of stuff. It aligns with what we teach. It aligns with all that kind of stuff. It aligns with, kind of the message that we want to portray. And so we'll include this in the Bible. And then you have another thing like Book of Thomas, and it doesn't necessarily align with what we teach. All the historicity is there. It's written in the same time period, but it doesn't really fit the mold of what we want to teach. It doesn't really fit the mold of what what we're trying to pass. And so even though it's, accredited to be written by the Apostle Thomas, we're going to disregard it because it doesn't go with what we're trying to teach as independent fundamental Baptists. And so, they'll come out with all sorts of bullshit, regarding the book of Thomas, and say, oh, it doesn't align with the canonical scriptures, right? And all they're trying to say is that, sure, the book of Thomas was written by a person who would be classified as but what he says in that does not agree with with the program that we're sticking to. And so whenever Jesus says in the book of Thomas that, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you and it's outside of you and it's all around you, we just ignore that because that doesn't work out at all. Or whenever Jesus says that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to become innocent like a child. I think in that specific section he was, referencing baby sucking on her mother's breast or something like that is what was referenced. But you basically have to be completely innocent if you want to enter this kingdom of heaven, and that this kingdom of heaven is something that you can experience right now, and you don't have to be saved to experience this kingdom of heaven. But here's the thing. He isn't referring to a kingdom of heaven up in the skies after death. He never refers to the kingdom of heaven like that. He always refers to the kingdom of heaven as something that can be experienced while you're alive, right? Living life innocently and loving completely, right? And so that shit doesn't align with the canonical scriptures. It doesn't align with what we're trying to show, that you're a worthless sinner and you're trash and your mere existence is quite pointless and stupid. But if you just believe these words, then you can have a reason to be alive, because ultimately you don't have a reason to be alive because you are useless and trash. And even though God made you, you're still worthless, because without God, you are worthless. But this is all in love. It's all very loving, and we want to love you completely. So come to the church, but don't wear that. Nope, don't drink that. Nope, don't come to the church when you look like that. Nope, straighten your hair. Nope, don't put on too much makeup now. You're gonna have to get laser removal for those tattoos now. No, we can't have you on stage because you're not wearing a tie. Yeah, all this bullshit, this pomp and circumstance bullshit, right? And so, yeah, the Bible is just basically just a bunch of books that they've decided fits the narrative that they want to push. Which, in the current day, it's kind of pointless. But if you reverse 1,000 years, what's the narrative that you would want to push with a religion? Well, church state, right? That used to be a thing, right? You had the Pope, who was basically the king of whatever parish, right? And so you have kings that go to the church to ask the church, can we go to war? Which is the fucking idea that the ultimate, I hate the idea of a God. The idea that there is this one singular, separate, emotionally unregulated being that can't, handle himself. Like, why is it that I'm able to forgive and love better than the God of the Old Testament? Aren't I supposed to be worse? Aren't I supposed to be shitty? Aren't I supposed to be a sinner? Why is it that whenever somebody cuts me off in traffic, or somebody, throws some crap at me, that I don't hold it against them? I don't need vengeance. I don't have anything that I have to prove. I don't sit there and think about it all day, right? So what? I'm better than God? Because God apparently can't do that, right? I mean, God goes into these fits of rage and just kills everybody. That's why for me it's like the word God. When I was walking away from Christianity, the word God was triggering for such a long time. So then I had to consider different words. Okay, I'll call it universal energy. I'll call it, the source of existence. I'll call it whatever, but I'm not, because it's not this one being, this one person. That idea is so stupid. It's so damn stupid to think that, grab a goddamn telescope and look out at the skies. You can't tell me that the Bible is like 100% accurate. When you start looking up there and you start realizing how tiny, how insignificant we are, and how massive the universe is, and all the different life forms that would take place out there, is there a Jesus on every planet? Like that just doesn't make any sense. So it's just a whole ordeal. But anyways, back to this.
As the book of Luke or the book of Revelation. Most Bible colleges and seminaries, instead of teaching this historical context, they teach theology. And they specifically teach Baptist theology, or whatever the denominational lens is. This means, instead of teaching you the history of every single individual book of the Bible and its real historical context, they teach you to take that book of the Bible and view it in the context of your religious tradition. It is the practice of teaching their religious beliefs, not actually examining scripture in an unbiased way to determine what it historically means and what it says. In this Bible college...
One thing I forgot to mention, because I went down that train of thought but didn't finish it. What I was talking about, back in the day, the purpose of religion. If you're wanting to control a bunch of people, and you have, let's say... let's talk about India, right? Because India, they have the belief of reincarnation, right? So think about it, okay? Let's say that people believe in reincarnation. Okay, then why do I care so much? If I die in this life, I come back tomorrow and I do it all over again. So then why does it matter? It's hard to punish a person, to control a person, when they have the idea that they're just going to come back in a different form, or in the same form, or as a different person, right? It's hard to regulate a person like that, right? So what do? Well, you convince them that they only live one life, and that they were created by this almighty being that has fits of rage and that will absolutely scour them and make their life a living mess. Then they have to convince them that the only way that they can get to heaven is that they have to completely obey what this being says. Who knows what this being says? Oh, only the church. So in other words, you have to listen to the church. And if you don't listen to the church, you're never going to see heaven. So what's the consequence of not obeying? Well, then you have an eternal damnation of hellfire, right? Okay. So now you've convinced people like, oh, well, here's this church thing. I don't necessarily like them, but if I don't listen, then I'm going to be damned for eternity and eternity. And I don't know if you guys ever attended one of these hellfire and brimstone services. They get very dramatic and graphic with how long eternity is, right? I remember one pastor, why are these fuckers always yelling at the pulpit? Like, stop fucking yelling. Nobody, like, goddamn. But anyway, so he's screaming at the pulpit. And he tells the oldest person in the room, he asks, how old are you? How old are you? How old are you? Like, oh, I'm 82 or 76. And he's like, 76 years old. Think about all the time that you've had. Now double it. Now triple it. You're burning. Think about putting your hand on the stove for 1 second. Now imagine for 76 years, you're burning. Now double it, you triple it, you quadruple it, and you're burning and you're screaming and there's that. It's like, oh my fucking God, dude. Y'all are trash. For making people feel that way, y'all are trash. I'm sorry. The religion, honestly, it started off with good roots, maybe with what Jesus was teaching, but we just don't know what the hell he was teaching because they've scoured everything to turn it into what the hell they've wanted it to be. So we just don't know anymore. There's little snippets in books outside of the Bible, but nothing to really definitively say, this is what Jesus was teaching, kind of thing. People argue about it all the time, and that's fine. Let them argue. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get back to that it's all just a control thing. And, when you have an unruly population in 900s or in the 1500s. Okay, maybe it's a good thing to keep everybody from constantly killing each other. But you eventually get to a point to where you outgrow that little pot that you're planted in. I feel like that's where society's at now. We've kind of outgrown this whole religious crap. And that's why a lot of people are leaving religion in massive droves. They're leaving religion towards atheism. They're leaving religion toward their own spiritual path, kind of like me and all that stuff. But the end goal is they're leaving Christianity because everybody's recognizing it for fear-mongering and control. And not unconditional love, but very much conditional love. I don't think there's any spot in the Bible where you could say that there is unconditional love. Because if Jesus loved you unconditionally, then he'd let you into heaven. Oh, he wouldn't let you. He loves you unconditionally, but you can't go into heaven because you're not perfect. Well, Jesus wasn't perfect because he lost his temper. He, whacked a bunch of people with a bunch of whips, and he killed an innocent fig tree. How is that perfect? And also, we don't know what he did from when he was 12 to when he was 30. Something tells me Jesus wasn't so innocent.
There was a huge focus on Christian apologetics. I am trained in Christian apologetics. So when I get apologists in my comment section trying to explain the Bible to me, I roll my eyes so hard. Number one, I already understand what you are trying to mansplain to me. And yes, in fundamentalist Christianity, there's absolutely patriarchal ridiculousness. They cannot even fathom that a woman went to Bible college in the first place, let alone actually understood what was taught. Number two, I already...
It's crazy that she said that they couldn't even fathom how you understood. A lot of guys, not everybody, obviously, not everyone, a lot of guys in fundamental Baptists kind of have this view of their spouses that they are just dumber. It's kind of funny because I kind of have this spat with my brother all the time. This guy, him and I live two completely different lives. And whenever we roll into an area of my expertise, I let my expertise show. And he immediately stops me and he's just like, stop. I don't know that information to be true. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, he looks it up and he sees that I'm accurate. And he's just like, well, I apologize, but there's just no way that you would have known that because I didn't know that. And I'm like, and who the fuck are you? Are you fucking Google in your mind? It's like everybody has their own little kind of areas of expertise. And so, but in Christianity, it's like with women, it's like, well, first of all, women are not allowed to be, humans. You can't talk, you can't speak, you can't take a breath, you can't look in any direction at any point in time. And you have to wear so much clothing that you're practically a walking thrift store. You think I'm dramatic? You can go to some of these independent fundamental churches and wait to see when the first female comes on stage to say anything. If they're going to say anything, it's going to be about the children's ministry or general things that are happening around the church. But it's certainly not going to be anything about teaching. Because in the Bible, 2 Timothy chapter 2, maybe, have a little read if you want to say, like, this is fucking ridiculous.
You know how apologetics as a field operates. It is disingenuous, it is intellectually dishonest, because it refuses to actually engage with the individual books of the Bible in their real historical context. Christian apologetics, it's an insane world. It is basically the practice of defending the faith. What that really means is that when someone points out there is something problematic about the Bible or a contradiction in the Bible, apologetics trains you to use specific phrases to make the problem seem like it's not a problem anymore. The motto in my Bible college was compare scripture with scripture. And what that really means is instead of taking a book of the Bible and reading it in its own historical context, take that book of the Bible and read it through the context of a completely unrelated book. If that sounds illogical to you, that's because it is. Christian apologetics views the Bible as one single coherent book with one clear message. That is not what the Bible is. Apologetics catapulted my deconstruction process because
there's so many contradictions in the Bible. So many contradictions in the Bible. There is no coherent story throughout the Bible. You know, an example is like the death of Christ, the death of Jesus. I want to say in Matthew and Luke, I'm totally going to butcher this, but in Matthew and Luke, it says that, you know, Jesus Christ died on the cross, and then the temple veil torn in two, and, you know, and then there was a big earthquake. The book of Mark, or one of them, I forget which one it was, but there's 3 books that hold the account. One of the books also adds that there was an earthquake so great that the earth split open and the saints crawled out of their fucking graves and walked around the city and were seen by a lot of people. Right? So somebody had a flair for the fucking dramatic, and other people might have just been, you know, writing down what they saw. But it's obvious that there are these added bits of just drama that may not actually be true, but there's no way to verify it because everything's 2,000 damn years old, right?
And I honestly and logically considered all of the apologetic responses that I was taught in Bible college, I realized that they did not make sense. They were not proof that the Bible is objectively true. Ironically, apologetics, which is supposed to be a defense of the Christian faith, was so easy for me to debunk as a field. Like, just the arguments are that easy that it ruined my faith. Because my content discusses harm caused by specific theological beliefs, my comment section does tend to devolve into apologetic debates. There is some educational and connective value in debate, so sometimes I will engage with apologists for the sole purpose of debunking their claims with the most basic logic. A lot of times, I am able to use the Bible itself to debunk their claims because the Bible is full of contradictions. It is incredibly easy to disprove the common defenses of Christianity. I engage with apologetics in this way for the sake of those who are still deconstructing. By the way, that is who my audience is. That is who my content is for. People who are deconstructing. Christians, you are not my target audience, yet you are always here. So I will engage with apologetic comments for the purpose of people who are newly deconstructing. They may feel that...
Look at Christians commenting on my videos all the time. You need to turn. You need all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, you know, I'm not... For like the really hard Bible thumpers that are out there trying to war for Christ's sake, dog, you know, just go find somebody else. Go comment on her channel. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Just stop being mean. Stop being mean. If we could get Christians to just stop being judgmental, we could win. Like that, like the world would change. No, but you know, whenever I walked away from Christianity, I couldn't take the logical approach out of it because, well, of course, there's a very clear logical approach out of it. But I couldn't take a logical approach out of it because of how scared of hell and all that kind of stuff. Because that has been wired into me since I was like 2 years old, 3 years old. You know, and my mom is quite dramatic. And so there's plenty of times in my life where I thought I was literally possessed by a demon because of my fucking mom. Because my mom is just fucking insane. And I love her to death, but when it comes to the Christian stuff, she, you know, she's too brazen, and she will not hesitate to tell a person that they're going to burn in hell unless they change their ways. And it's just like, dude, oh my God. You know,
things aren't adding up for them. But the second they voice any doubts or concerns, Christian apologists will hound them with mountains of Bible verses. And I think it can be really helpful if I take their giant response and in like 2 sentences say, here's why you're wrong. It's not for my own ego. It's not because I need to protect my identity as an atheist.
And my thing is, you know, I typically don't, you know, if I'm feeling, it just goes with the day. If I've had a stressful day and I'm already kind of hot and heavy and I see a comment, you know, I might engage. It depends on how hot I am that day, you know? But normally when I'm cool, calm, and collected, if you're pulling me out on like a 16-hour day and I am hot and I pull up a comment, oh yeah, I'm gonna respond. But for the most part, I with those people in general, you're not gonna win. So why try? They feel like they are doing something holy by fighting with you. They really feel that because that's what they're taught, right? It's Paul, I forget where, and Paul says, anyways, Paul basically says to go to war with people who try to say otherwise, right? It's the whole thing where even if an angel was to come down from heaven and tell you that a gospel is different than mine, let him be accursed, kind of thing. And so, they really do feel like by sending you a bunch of verses, telling you that you're wrong, and that if you don't change your ways, you're going to burn in hell, they really do feel like they're doing God's work. That's why I say it's like it's an all-encompassing mental disease. It's an all-encompassing mental. It's almost like what do you call those things? The mental conditions where it's like I can't think of it. Mental disorder, maybe. But it's like it's genuinely like a sickness of thought, and they've been and here's the thing, most of them have been trained since childhood, so it is all they know. This has been their world, and so just snapping out of it from a simple comment, it's not going to happen. Their world has to fall apart, or their life has to fall apart, or something has to happen that they kind of get jolted a little bit, and then they wake up and they're just like, wait a second, I was the perfect Christian. I did this, I did that, I trusted in God, and God was never there for me, and I did this, I did that, I did this. Whenever I went through my divorce, which was kind of the thing that kind of kicked it off for me, I couldn't understand why, because I was going to church, I was doing all the right things, I was being a Christian, I genuinely had a love for God and a desire to, serve and all this kind of stuff. And here it was that my life was falling apart, that my life, that I was the one who is, getting served with a divorce and having this big, massive life upheaval while I'm trying to study for the MCAT. And here I am with all these applications out and all of these, medical schools waiting for my MCAT score to get released. And now here I've been served with this absolutely mind-boggling thing that I just can't handle. And so of course I absolutely blow my MCAT. And for the next 6 months, I get to wake up to rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. And then I tried to date a girl and I got rejected by her, and then I got rejected by another girl, and then another rejection letter, and eventually I said, fuck this, and I attempted suicide, right? It just, shit has to shake in your life really fucking hard before you wake up and you're just like, maybe this shit's not real, because I'm doing everything the way I'm supposed to be doing things, and my life is still falling apart. Where the hell you at, God? Oh, that whole stupid thing where, there's 2 footsteps in the beach, and I looked back and there was only one set of footprints, and I said, God, where were you? And it's like, and I said, and then Jesus says, those single set of footprints is where I carried you. You didn't carry me for shit, It's like, you might have fucking dropped me, but you definitely didn't carry me, right? And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, normally it takes like these dramatic, intense, life-altering situations for people to shake and wake up, right? Most of the people who I know who have left Christianity, certainly a lot of the kind of spiritual people that I associate with, Most of them were very Christian, were diehard Christian, whether they were Catholic or Pentecostal, Baptist, whatever the hell they were, whatever flavor they were, the flavor that was going to go to hell, according to Church of Christ. Whatever flavor they were, some shit happened in their life that they couldn't explain. And they didn't understand why. And they looked to God and God wasn't there, right? And so they had this like upheaval moment where they had a soul searching experience. And then they eventually found what worked for them, what they found to be true for themselves and all that kind of stuff. And everybody decides that for themselves. And so stop trying to shove shit down people's throats, If a person decides that they want to wear Spider-Man t-shirts everywhere they go, you don't walk up to that person and like with all the conviction in your soul tell them like you need to fucking stop that because that's bad and you're going to burn in hell. No, you just let them wear their Spider-Man t-shirts because you see that that's a part of them that they love. You see that they express that part of themselves, and you see it as a beautiful thing. And you move on with your damn life because it doesn't affect you. Anyways, back to this. Okay, I am going to turn this into an hour-long video accidentally. Let me stop talking a bit. Okay. What is apologetics? What are we at over here? Have you tried reading the Bible? Timeline continue here. Let's skip over to here. Have you tried reading the Bible? Sorry guys, I tend to make these. It's funny because I just interacted with Jaden. Shout out, man, buddy. If I just interacted with Jaden, and Jaden sent me a little video. He was one of the guys that we had on the show a while ago. If you'd like to tell your story, please send me an email and we can have an interaction. We'll record the whole thing. Don't be afraid of it. If you want to come on, we can record something. If you decide you don't like it, we can scrap it. It doesn't bother me. But anyways, we were having a little interaction, and he sent me like a 2-minute video of just kind of him talking, and I sent him back like a 30-minute fucking video. So Jaden got his own personal YouTube episode.
Bible college, I had already read the Bible cover to cover more than once. But during this time, I read it again. And this time, instead of approaching the Bible as a devotional or as a roadmap for my life, like searching the text for something personal to me to apply in my real life, I approached the Bible to learn its historical context because that's what I thought I would be learning. This time, my focus was educational and not devotional. I think I took a class titled Old Testament History. Instead, I just got a rereading of the Old Testament accompanied by a Christian apologetics course. I wasn't actually taught scholarly biblical history in Bible college. I have since done lots of reading and brushing up on that after the fact because I think it's interesting. But because I was approaching the text in this more objective way, I was still able to see through the cracks of popular apologetic defenses of problematic biblical passages, particularly that Old Testament, because wow, it's a lot. Most Christians have not actually read the entire Bible. Some people don't have access or ability to do that, but if you are a Christian and you have access to a Bible and you can read it and you haven't, I think that's really embarrassing for you. It's embarrassing to believe that something is real when you don't even know what that thing is. The Christians that have read the entire Bible often tend to neglect its actual historical context and simply interpret the Bible through the lens of their particular religious tradition. The Christians, like my past self, who value objective truth and who really care about what the Bible actually says, realize that it contains some insanely problematic things. Then we get to the place where we can no longer endorse the Bible as the perfect Word of God. Many people have lost faith. And
one of those insanely insane things is if you have a child who is problematic and you've tried to discipline and they still don't listen to you and they become unruly, you can take them to the church and the church will discipline. And if they're still unruly, then you can take them out to the city and have them stoned to death so that you don't have to deal with that child anymore. Yeah, nothing. Just a little drop there.
Bible college, seminary, and divinity school because they learned about the Bible. Just a few of the disturbing things that I came to understand are in the Bible are the entire book of Job, slavery, genocide, the submission and gross mistreatment of women. Two stories that haunt me to this day are the Levite's concubine and the story of Jephthah's daughter. Holy hell. And before
the Levite's concubine. I forgot about that one. I'm going to have to brush up on that. But Jephthah's daughter is basically the story where You know, Jephthah was at war. He prayed to God, God, please let me kill these people. You know, I love killing so many things. Let me kill these people too. I love killing, God. Please. There's like 10,000 people out there. Please let me kill each individual one of them. I want to strangle them. No, I'm just kidding. Like, how fucked is that? But, Jephthah's daughter, so basically, long story short, he prays to God and says, God, which is such a weird fucking thing to what his agreement was. But what he said is, God, if you will deliver these people into my hands, if you let me kill them all and you let me win, the first thing that runs out of my house when I return home, I will sacrifice to you. I'll put it on an altar, I'll slit its throat, and let it fucking bleed out in flames so that you can get your high off of fucking burnt flesh. Because apparently, you know, the complete and cosmic essence of all being loves burning flesh. It's fucking weird. It's just fucking weird, man. Christianity's so fucking weird. And so God says, okay, don't forget that you promised this. You vowed to me. I'm going to hold you to your vow. And he goes, and God delivers the enemy into his hands. He is now victorious, and he goes home to go complete the first thing that runs out of his house. He's going to kill it and put it inside of an oven, right? Why? That's such a weird fucking thing, right? It's another thing to say, I'm going to sacrifice, you know, this spotless, you know, this amazing, or I'm going to spend all of my money to buy a cow and then I'm going to kill it, you know, or something like that. But no, he said he's going to sacrifice the first thing that runs out of the house. And his daughter runs out of the house, right? And so then the Bible says, and this is where you can't get around apologetics bullshit, okay? The Bible very clearly states that Jephthah, after he let his daughter mourn for a couple of months with her friends, which kind of got fucking crazy, Jephthah did to her as he had promised God. In other words, he killed her, slashed her throat, put her on an altar, and burnt his daughter to the Old Testament God. Jesus Christ and the Old Testament God are one. So, in other words, Jesus Christ accepted a burnt offering. A human burnt offering. Just like Baal, just like all the other fucked up gods of the Old Testament, apparently, that the Old Testament God had so many problems with, right? So Abraham and Isaac, everybody always says, well, God was just testing Abraham. Well, apparently he didn't test Jephthah because he allowed Jephthah to murder his daughter, stick her corpse on an altar, and light that shit on fire. And he accepted it as an offering. So where is this, this beautiful God, this unconditionally loving, this graceful, this forgiving? Where the fuck is he at here? Right? Why couldn't he have been like, because I can tell you right now, if somebody promised that to me and I did it, I'd be like, you don't have to kill your fucking daughter, dude. Like, I'm cool. First of all, if somebody prayed to me to be like, deliver all these people into my hands because I want to kill everybody, I'd be like, fuck off, dude. This is you, not me. You want to do this stupid shit? You do this stupid shit, but I'm not going to have any part of it. But let's say I was some sort of psycho and I was like, okay, I'll allow you to kill all these people. If the question ever came up of like, oh, do I kill my daughter now? No, you don't have to kill your fucking daughter, Go kill a goat or some shit, But it's so fucking weird, man. And the way that apologetics is so fucking stupid. The way that they try to twist everything to be, it's such a loving thing that he allowed his, it's so beautiful that he slit his daughter's throat. And then my dad, when I bring this stuff up, my dad gets furious and pissed off because he does not like to hear it. Christians don't like to hear it because it actively pokes and prods at the shit that subconsciously they can't deal with themselves, right? They can't handle the Old Testament themselves. That's why when you poke at it, they get bothered, right? Imagine a person who, who's never been able to have a nice car, and, the grandmother decides to buy that person's child a car, and a nice car. That person is going to be a little upset because he's going to be happy for his daughter that got the car, but upset that he never had that happen for him. And so anytime the daughter goes to brag about the grandma's car, he's going to get pissed off because secretly he wished that would have happened for him. It's kind of like the same thing with Christianity. There's a lot of fucked up shit in the Old Testament, and they have to believe that God is all-encompassing, beautiful, loving, kind, unconditionally loving, and they have to believe that shit. And so when you bring up all the fucked up shit from the Old Testament, you are met with all sorts of rage, because first they have to defend their faith. They have to defend their faith, and they have to aggressively defend their faith, right? As per Paul's commands. So they have to aggressively defend their faith because that's what God wants them to do. But secondly, they have to believe that, or what? Or burn in hell forever and ever and ever and ever. And so that's the thing. That's why I say it's a mental illness. That's what I was worried, the illness. That's why I say it's a mental illness, because they are so psychically, that is not the word. No, it's not psychologically. That's the word I was thinking of. They have been so psychologically wired for fear, wired for, it fucks people up. This religion fucks people up. And it fucks up people's abilities to have healthy relationships. It fucks up people's abilities to express themselves. It fucks up people's abilities to be truly, genuinely happy, right? I look at my mom and my dad. I love them both dearly to death. They should not be married at all because they are like the worst people for each other. But they stay married because they're religion. And everybody looks and says, oh my God, you guys have been married for 35 years. And I'm over here in the back of like, yeah, it's been 35 years of fucking screaming, threats of divorce every goddamn year. Not even every goddamn year. It's like every other month. And it's just absolutely insane chaos. But Sunday comes around, put everything back together, lipstick on the pig, and we're going to show up to church perfect, right? And so, and my dad does the Baptist thing, right? He doesn't allow my mom to do a damn thing. He doesn't allow my mom to make any decisions. My mom is an incredibly suppressed woman, and she hates it. But she also refuses to look at the belief system that she's adopted for her life that tells the man to oppress her, right? She hates the fact that, that my dad won't let her, kind of make any of these big financial decisions or make any sort. But then she goes right back and picks up the book that oppresses her. And she reads and she prays to the prays to the belief system that oppresses her. And she goes to the church and worships and cycles along in the system that oppresses her. And then she takes her anger out on her husband because she sees her husband as the focal point of the oppression. No, your brain is the focal point of the oppression, and the God that you're supposedly worshiping is the focal point of your oppression. But you refuse to see that. You refuse to change from that. So, deal with it then. Right? Don't complain about it. But that's the thing, is they don't want to see that because it's so deeply wired that they'll go to hell if they doubt it. Don't doubt it. You're going to burn in hell. And they make hell, they are dramatic with it. It's quite literally an epidemic in the United States, if you would, that, that so many people are threatened so intensely and they are so afraid of hell that they would rather be Christian nationalists and Zionists. They would rather be incredibly racist and sexist. They would rather do all of these fucked up things and struggle with all of these fucking jump through all these apologetic loopholes, because they would rather do that than, do the work that it takes to fucking free yourself from this shit. It's funny. I was watching a video. I don't know if any of this is true because I haven't done the research for myself to actually verify any of this information. But there was a guy who was talking about a study that apparently a bunch of Roman Catholics did, and they were trying to figure out why people were leaving the church in massive numbers, why people were leaving the church, and what they found when they left the church. And why they were leaving the church was because of love. People in general don't care how people love. If you want to be gay and you want to love another man and you want to marry another man, great. If you find a beautiful connection with a person, marry the person. You don't have to get married because that's kind of a traditional, that's a religious thing in and of itself, but some people enjoy, the kind of the formalities of the commitment. I like the formalities of marriage, don't get me wrong, I think its roots were kind of gross, but I think it's become a beautiful thing. Just kind of like Valentine's Day, right? And a lot of our fucking holidays. The roots are kind of fucking gross, but it's become what we've created it to be, is this beautiful thing. So we've essentially kind of remorphed it into something that's a little bit, the roots, hell, look at the United States. The roots of how we got here and what we did to the Indians, that's a little fucked, right? But we're here now. We can't go back in time, but what we can do is we can make it better, right? We can morph this into something that's beautiful for everybody. Anyways, but yeah, the whole point that I was trying to get across was just, these people, they're when you're in it, you're taught to fight everybody on the planet that doesn't have Jesus has the devil inside of them or has demons inside of them actively, right? So be compassionate when a Christian pops up in your comments and they're yelling and they're screaming and they're hailing Bible verses at you. Do your best to be compassionate and to understand that it is basically a mental illness. It is basically, it's something that they're dealing with. They grew up with it. It's kind of like people, whenever you have a people who grew up incredibly abused, or they grew up in incredibly chaotic households or whatever, and, maybe they lash out in a way, you understand that comes from a place, right? They didn't just lash out that way because their soul was like, oh, this is the best expression of myself. I'm just going to scream and get pissed off at everybody. No. What's coming out is a lot of that pent-up anger, a lot of that pent-up rage from their parents shit-talking on them, from their pastor shit-talking on them, from everybody shit-talking on them. And it's all this pressure, and it's constantly under, it's like in a pressure cylinder. And they're just running around with all this tension built up inside of their emotional body. And the second somebody says anything, poof, there goes a little explosion goes off. And then everybody freaks out, right? That's how I used to be. I used to have so much pent up rage and anger for my family and all sorts of stuff. My story is very, very dark and it's very long. But I used to be that person where I would run around as like a fucking loaded gas cylinder, just ready to fucking explode. I was, inside of a car on a 110-degree day. I was always ready to just fucking blow up, And it took the smallest little needle pop for me to lose my shit. And, and why? Because I wasn't living the way that I wanted to live. I didn't believe the shit that I wanted to believe. I was forced into a system I didn't want to be. Forced into a family I didn't want to be in, forced to be hated by everybody around me. I hated life, period. There's a reason why I attempted suicide, right? But yeah, with that being said, let's get back to the video, because sorry guys, I tend to rant. I'm so sorry.
Apologists who will inevitably show up in my comment section start typing, "That's taken out of context," or "This is all descriptive and not prescriptive." I know your arguments because I was trained in them, and they don't hold up. I will, of course, be diving into these stories in future videos. I encountered some huge problems with my belief system in Bible college, but I needed time to process and work through them, so I did not leave the church or Christianity quite yet. My husband and I continued to go to Bible college together until I dropped out due to a Christian nationalist propaganda class. See this video here. During this time in Bible college and still afterward, my husband and I were also actively working in ministry together. I was substitute teaching at the Christian school, working in church nursery, assisting in children's church. My husband was preaching children's church services. We also participated in door knocking, like going door to door, proselytizing, trying to convert people to Christianity and inviting people to church. We also worked in nursing home ministry, though I have some uncomfortable memories from...
Not the... Hey, my name is John, and I'm from the Baptist church down the road, and we're just running around in the neighborhood, and we were wanting to ask people the question of do you know the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Oh, God, I still know the fucking script. It's beginning to look a lot like... Fuck that.
That time, I can't say that I particularly regret ministering to the elderly in this way, and that's because it was really meaningful for them. Some of those people, like, we were the only visitors they ever got. There's a bittersweetness to those memories. I married my husband in 2018 on my 19th birthday, and he continued to go to Bible college for a while, even after I had dropped out. He continued until his workload got too demanding, and we really did need that money because in 2019, I got pregnant, and this was intentional. In Christian fundamentalist circles, girls and women are trained to be trad wives.
It's like the worst year.
As soon as possible,
it's got to be the worst year to get pregnant.
And luckily for our family, this worked out well for a variety of complex reasons. But for a lot of people, this causes massive harm. That's a conversation for another day. During my pregnancy, I was very sick and I had to rest a lot, so I couldn't do a lot of physical things. And that meant I had time to play around in my mind and to deconstruct. And at this point, I didn't realize that I was deconstructing. I thought that I was engaging in research to strengthen my faith, like the Bereans in the book of Acts, right? I was searching the scriptures daily and trying to quell all of the doubts and concerns that had come up for me in Bible college. I had my daughter at the end of 2019. I had a lot of complications, so deconstruction was stalled while I focused on getting better. But during pregnancy, I had decided that corporal punishment was abuse. I completely deconstructed that concept. I decided that I would not spank my child.
I want to say 2019. I want to say I might have been atheist at that point. 2019, I might have been atheist because I started college 2017. I want to say I started college 2017, maybe 2018. And by 2019, I was kind of, I was like, I've taken anthropology, which when you study anthropology, it's like, okay, the Bible, okay, and then you start taking molecular genetics and things like that, and you're like, okay.
Took this very weirdly personally. He used my baby as a public example in the middle of a church service, in the middle of a sermon, as a way to shame and manipulate me. He was basically telling the church she's a bad mom, she's a bad Christian because she refuses to beat her baby. Are you okay, sir? The full story of this event and a more in-depth discussion on corporal punishment is coming to the channel soon.
Yeah. Churches are fucking weird, man. They're just fucking weird. They're like little neighborhood, psycho gatherings. Like, it just... once again, mental illness. But it's just... the way that they publicly, and not all churches are like this. Okay, we are talking about a very small niche belief system in Christianity. Church of Christ certainly fits that example. Independent fundamental Baptist, the way that I was raised, yes, fits that example. But there is this kind of like overlording. The pastor can publicly shame people inside of the church. I can't tell you how many times the pastor just stopped, preaching and basically told a person, hey, you're not paying attention to the sermon. If you're not going to pay attention to the sermon, then you can leave. And the pastor would go down and take people's phones away. like all sorts of psycho shit, man. It's a hard cult, man. It's crazy.
You mess with my kid and you are dead to me. I don't care who you are or what position of authority you hold. I'm not afraid of you, and I will not be putting up with your disrespect. This event, among other...
Second Timothy. Christians, get her. She's what's the fucking... Oh, I'll just grab the goddamn book. It's right here. Second Timothy. Unsubmissive. What is it? Second Timothy. Chapter 2. Consider what I have said. These words of them. Shame, rightly dividing, and strong in the grace. The Second Timothy. Oh, maybe it's first. No. I think it's First Timothy. I keep saying Second Timothy. I want to say it's First Timothy, chapter 2. Women's adornment and behavior. Let's have a little read. In like manner also, women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. So please, just wear shame on your face everywhere that you go. Please. And don't put on any makeup, and don't put on any jewelry, because you'll burn in hell. But, which becometh woman professing godliness with good works, let the woman learn in silence with all subjection. So once again, women, please, shut up. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over a man, but to be in silence. So once again, wholeheartedly, I'm not saying this. The Bible is saying this. I'm just telling you that if you want to obey God's law, you'll shut the hell up. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in transgression. So once again, just a little bit of shaming of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandma. This is the true saying, if a man desire office of a bishop, notwithstanding she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and holiness and sobriety. Hold on. Where is the thing where women have to, other than, women can't usurp authority over a man, they may lead a quiet and peaceful life in the godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who will have men to be saved. For there is one God and one mediator between God and men, the man Jesus Christ, who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified in due time. Without wrath and doubting. Okay, so I guess that was qualifications for bishops, qualifications for deacons, Paul's warnings of false teachers. It's kind of funny because in the book of Revelation, Jesus kind of calls Paul a false teacher, but we won't get into that. Okay, but that, you see, I mean, it's bullshit. It's sexist. It's disgusting, and I can't tell you how many fucking people that I know that whenever you bring up those parts of the Bible, they just, but it's a different time. No, or you're going to be a good damn Christian and follow the damn book and, you freaking beat your dog. I don't know. Are you going to, God.
Pretty problematic things that happened in this church. This is the same IFB church referenced in this video. These events did not make me an atheist. It is very common for Christians to assume that I became an atheist because of church hurt. This event, using my child as a tool of public shaming, that made me leave that church. The traumatic experience in my childhood church caused me to leave that church, but these bad experiences did not make me an atheist. I am going to estimate that this brings me to about 2021 on the timeline, probably 2021 through the first half of 2022. So at this point, I'd had enough of Christian fundamentalism, so I fully believed it was a cult. However, I still wanted to hold on to my faith. I still loved Jesus, so
at that point, I was basically already... 2021, I was kind of finding my new path. That's when a lot of things were happening. I was having a lot of experiences. I was doing a lot of research. I had found plant research. And 2022, I've basically solidified I had 75% solidified my perception of reality, my perception of, the whole thing that this is, time itself, humans itself, particles themselves, the fact that at the end of the day, you and I are just floating balls of energy that don't actually exist. And, you know, that okay, that sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but you know, when you look at consciousness, there's consciousnesses at every damn level, right? So you can look at the subatomic particles, and you see plenty of signs of some sort of spooky conscious choice, whatever. You can go up to the atomic particle, and there's signs of conscious choice still in the atomic particle. And recently they did a multi-atomic. That's not it. Molecular, I guess. Where there's like, you know, a very large mass of atoms that were still able to display these very non classical physics properties, and it goes up and up and up the list. And so, you know, when you look at bacteria, you can see that there's a level of understanding. There's a level of awareness there, that they react to light. They go here, they go there. They're not just these mindless, you know, things. And then you can see the what do you call those little single cellular amoebas, and you can see the amoebas under a microscope, and you can see the intelligence there. That there is intelligence there. And then you can see the water bears, right? You see that there's intelligence there. You see these ciliates. You see there's intelligence there. And then you can take algae, and if you put algae under a microscope, and you do a really long, you know, if you zoom in really, really fucking tight and use phase contrast microscopy, which for some reason I got really big into microscopy, so I had fluorescent microscopes, phase contrast microscopes, all sorts of shit. I still have a lot of my microscopes because I love microscopes. I love looking at shit. You can take a piece of algae, stick it under your microscope, and of course you got light there, right? And so it's going to be able to process and photosynthesize underneath your microscope, as long as the, you know, the chemicals, you know, pH of the water, if you just keep it in the water, it's fine. But if you do a time lapse of that process and you watch the time lapse, you can see all of the little, you know, things, and you can zoom in onto the nucleus, and you see the nucleus of each individual cell just fucking buzzing around, going at shit, and all these little fucking proteins just. And actually, in human saliva, spit on a slide, stick it under a microscope, you know, and then put phase contrast microscopy in it so that you can see the organelles and all the stuff that's inside of the cells. And you can see how fast, you know, with photosynthesis, it's a very slow process, but with mammalian cells, you can see how fast these inside just generators of energy are just pumping out, you know, see these white blood cells with their arms just running around chasing bacteria, and these bacteria running away from the white blood cells, and then you could see this little parasite just throwing around, you know, and then you could see all of these different things. Whenever you just start taking nature and throwing it under a microscope and really zooming in, you start to understand that there are levels to nature. When you take yourself and you put yourself under a microscope, there's levels to yourself. There's levels of understanding to yourself, right? You could take a white blood cell, take a blood sample, take white blood cells, and you can put them in a petri dish, and you can introduce a couple of bacteria, and what you'll see is hunter and prey going at each other, right? And you'll see these white blood cells actively chasing these bacteria and turning, and oh, the bacteria went over here, I'm going to jive to the left. Oh, it's back over here, I'm going to jive to the right. Oh wait, no, it went the other way, I'm going to jive back over there. And you see these things just chasing each other, right? And you take bacteria and you put them under a petri dish, and you just see how 1 become 2, become 4, become 8, become 16, and it's just like, oh my god, this is how bacterial infections start. You can see the process of them budding away from each other. I don't know that that's the right word. Budding is typically used for yeast. Doesn't matter right now. That was like damn near 10 years ago at this point. But yeah, so then you start to see, okay, well then you get into body communication. So then tell me, why is it that you're so smart brain can't communicate with your body has its own form of communication with itself, right? When I cut myself, I don't have to sit there and use my brain to send the commands, to send the white blood cells, to send the platelets, to send this, to send that. Everybody get on board. Everybody focus. I don't have to do a goddamn thing. My body has got this whole chemical communication already set in space. And killer T cells are constantly running around your body looking for cells that don't match the profile. They're basically policemen inside of your body. And they're like, oh, you know what? This cell isn't matching the description. Of course, I've just lost my keyboard again. There it goes. This cell is not matching the description that it's supposed to be doing. It's not displaying the surface proteins that they're supposed to be displaying. Kill it. They'll give the command. Boom. Apoptosis. Flush out. Cell is dead, recycled, and basically everybody else goes. And that killer T cells goes on its way, looking for another one, just sensing, okay, everything here is good, everything here is good, everything here is good, bumps into a white blood cell. Oh, good day, sir. Good to see you again. Keeps going on its way, right? All these blood cells rushing all over the place. Oh, look, there's a cell that doesn't look right. Walks up to it. Why aren't you just, displaying the right surface proteins? Boom! Apoptosis, right? It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. The body itself is insane. It is insane, right? But you are completely unaware. You don't have to tell your heart to beat. Why? Because your body is focused on keeping you alive. Your brain's doing something else because your brain's trying to figure out how to talk. It's trying to figure out how to get food. It's trying to figure out how to survive. It's trying to figure out how to get a date and how to procreate. Your brain's doing all this kind of stuff. But then what happens? The body takes over. Right? How does your brain know what hole is thickening? Right? Right? Your body takes over, right? Because there's this level of consciousness, this level of intelligence that your brain is not aware of. And then we get to the level of your brain, right? And then the level of your brain is worried about a whole other goddamn set of things, right? And so it's layers on layers on layers on layers on layers. Because the same brain that decides that, there is nothing that's special about reality is the same brain whose atoms are able to superimpose the position and their electrons are indefinitely in these clouds of spaces that we don't necessarily know where they exist at any given point in time. Why is it that the carbon atom that is deep inside of my brain, the electron is just not in any specific location? It's just kind of all over there. So I'm just a big ass blob of shit and electrons, and somehow I got to pay rent. I don't have to pay rent, but it's, that's a long, then you get into the manifesting thing and you go to the spiritual route and all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is really fun, free car, free rent. That's all great and all. But, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, sure, you can kind of tap into the field. I think that's a fun thing to do. But at the end of the day, what are you interacting with, right? Christians will tell you you're interacting with the devil and demons, all right? Any sort of view outside of Christianity, if you're not like interacting with the Bible, then it's immediately demonic. It's just, okay. Sorry, I'm going to stop talking. My bad, guys. I went off on another tangent.
Your average, mainstream, non-denominational, evangelical Christian. The people who don't really follow all the principles outlined in the Bible because they can see that those are really bad principles. They understand that if we interpret the Bible for what it means.
And don't even get me started with the chemical reactions, bro. Don't even... Okay, I promise I'm going to start. I promise. No, just... But when you study the biochemistry, that's where you realize how fucking intelligent each individual cell is and how each individual cell, okay, I'm fucking nerding the fuck out right now, but each individual cell is constantly saying, hey, I've got so much of this. Do you need some of that? Hey, I need some more of that. Let me pull some in through my membrane here. Oh, you got some cholesterol? Bet. Let me tighten up a little bit. Just all sorts of shit, it's in the chemistry of how, the way that your body happens is by breaking shit apart. we are constantly in a state of dying. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're growing. It doesn't matter if you're just born. If you're 2 years old, if you're 1 year old, if you're 3 years old, your body is in a chemically constant state of falling apart and breaking down and dying. And by throwing gas in the engine, by throwing food in the engine, by throwing water and Coca-Cola and candy and all sorts of shit inside of the engine, you get more food, you have more shit to break down, and then it breaks down, and then it builds some stuff up while it breaks stuff down. It uses breaking down reactions for the energy to build stuff up to make your body so that you can grow, but you're growing by falling apart. Huh, me. So, it's insane. It's insane. I love it. I'm ultra fucking geek about it. I mean, there's a reason why I graduated summa cum laude, right? I'm fucking geek about it. So.
Right? That principle that's in the Bible will cause harm. So they just cherry pick the good stuff and use more Christian apologetics to explain away the rest. And I held on to these new apologetics as long as I could manage. I was wrestling with biblical issues like complementarianism versus egalitarianism. I almost completely convinced myself that the Bible, I can't even say it, so stupid, that the Bible is not patriarchal. This is so laughable because it obviously is.
Yeah.
The morning of the day that I scripted this video, actually, I was in the car with my husband and we were discussing a particular church memory, and he looked at me and said, man, that was like obvious, like patriarchy. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he said, I can't believe we convinced ourselves that it wasn't like all about the use of women as property and the subjugation of women. Like, the cognitive dissonance was so thick. This topic is on my video list. I also convinced myself that the Bible doesn't condone hitting children when it blatantly does.
You can't hit them, but you can throw the bricks that hit them. You can't. Obviously, the spare the rod the child. What's the spare the child the rod and corrupt the some shit? I don't know, but there you can't kill them, but you can throw the bricks that kill them. No, it's pretty clear in the Old Testament. If you have an unruly child, I don't want to look for it right now. I'll play the video and then I'll go look for it. But if you have an unruly child, take it to the church. If the pastor can't do anything, take them out in front of the city, and the whole city will kill your child for you. That way you don't have to deal with an unruly child. That's Bible 101.
To engage in a less
Parenting
harmful
101
form
for
of
the Bible.
Christianity. Genuinely. Like, I didn't want to be an atheist. I didn't want to leave Christianity. I loved Jesus. Like I talked about in my last video, there were times in my life when I had no one but God, and I wanted to keep that, because I know what it's like to be completely alone. But at the end of the day, I could not prove to myself that Christianity was harmless or that it was objectively true. Since I mentioned my husband, I'll address this. I have gotten some comments saying that either I corrupted my husband or he corrupted me, and we took each other away from Jesus. These Christians cannot fathom that two people both had their own doubts over different biblical issues.
There's another couple. There's another couple on YouTube. I want to do one of their videos. But yeah, they're kind of the same thing where it's like they were super Christian. They were both having doubts when they walked away from Christianity. They were afraid that their marriage was going to fall apart, but they were like, "Oh no, I'm just me." It's like nothing dramatic's going to change. Like, you're not going to get freaking possessed. Jesus. The only thing that's going to possess you is the goddamn IRS. Murder by an unknown person. Let's see. Deuteronomy 18-21. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that, when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, grab that motherfucker, and bring him unto the elders of his city. Sorry, I thought it was the church. And unto the gate of his place, and they shall say unto the elders of his city, our son is stubborn and rebellious, he will not obey our voice, he is a glutton and a drunkard. So I guess apparently he's got to be a glutton and a drunkard too. And all the men in his city shall stone him with stones that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear the unconditionally loving God that is so merciful and loving and kind and gracious. But fuck that little child, am I right? like, what the shit is this? How the fuck does anybody get convinced? Like, this is why you have to start as children. Because as an adult, reading this shit doesn't make any goddamn sense. You have to start them as children. It is disgusting.
Independently, in our own times, came to the conclusion that the Bible is made up. Why is that surprising to you? People independently deconstruct Christianity all the time. Is it just because we are married that you say that? Because in our marriage, there is room for individuality and disagreement, independent thought, and we still love each other through all of that. If your marriage does not allow you to think or act independently and freely, that is a red flag. During this mainstream non-denominational phase, I did completely
And unfortunately, that is the position that a lot of older women are in with their traditional, independent, fundamentalist, or maybe Church of Christ. I don't know how they handle their women, but independent, fundamentalist, Baptist, this is the situation that a lot of women are in. The pastor's wife of the church that I went to was constantly, publicly shamed and put down and belittled because she had no right to speak to the man. She had no right to tell the man what to do. Disgusting.
Construct my
Absolutely
King James Version
disgusting.
only beliefs. Being King James only just means, here's my old King James. It means that you believe all of the other Bible versions and translations are corrupt. Well,
Same.
even the briefest look at how the KJV came to exist.
And that's the part that sent me to the devil. That is literally where the church was like, John, you're dabbling with the devil. All I told them was, we're over here studying the KJV. If we were really Christian and we truly wanted to follow the letter of the law, why wouldn't we go back to the original text and make a new Bible that is word for word? All misunderstandings and all things that don't make 100% sense and all, word for word, what the text says. That literally got me like condoned in church. They were like, John, you need to stop that. That's a very dangerous path that you're walking down. I'm like, how the fuck is me wanting to get the Bible precise with the historical documents a dangerous path? It was a bit of a red flag for me. I was like, because here's my thing. I don't care for tradition. I love tradition. There's some traditions that I really like. I think Christmas is fun. I enjoy gathering with the family and getting everybody gifts and loving everybody. Don't give a shit that we, claim it to be the birth of somebody. I don't necessarily care. I enjoy the sentiment, kind of like, kind of weird ass roots, but now it's created into something that everybody likes, right? It's same with Easter, except I don't actually do anything with Easter. Let it be about the goddamn bunnies. I don't really care for Easter. But I do enjoy Christmas. I enjoy Thanksgiving, right? Loving on the family, being with people, sharing with people. I like that. This is good, right? We don't need to talk about, the shitty beginnings. Sure, everything seems to have a shitty beginning, apparently, but that's part of being a human being. You look back at how you used to do things, how you used to treat things, how you used to treat women, how you used to treat animals, how you used to do things, and you say, no, it can be better. And you move it into a better direction. You don't have to cancel it. We're going to cancel Christmas because of the upbringings. Christmas is not what it used to be. None of these holidays, Valentine's Day is not what it used to be. You want to find something dark? Look into Valentine's Day. Now it's a day where we get to shower our girls with all sorts of gifts and shit, So, which the boys should be equally showered. So if you're a chick out there and you're watching and you're like, oh my God, it's Valentine's Day, you're going to shower me. You better do some work too. Like, let's be realistic. Like, come on. This dude's out there spending hundreds of dollars on you, and you're not even gonna like compliment him on his Jordans. I'm just kidding.
Proves that it was written by people.
Funny.
Once I deconstructed this King James only idea, I very, very quickly deconstructed the Bible as God's word. There will be deep dives of these experiences on the channel probably in the fall time of this year. This was my shelf break moment. The shelf break is an illustration often used in deconstruction spaces. Your belief is a shelf. Every concern, contradiction, or fallacy that you encounter that causes you to doubt or question that belief goes on the shelf in your mind. For a while, this shelf can hold space for these problems. It can carry them. The belief can withstand some questioning and doubts. Evidence you find that is contrary to this belief goes on the shelf. Holes in the apologetics for this belief goes on the shelf. Eventually, the shelf becomes so full that it breaks and you can no longer hold this belief. Everything on my timeline up until this point could be held on the shelf. My belief was that the Bible is the true and perfect word of God. I really believed that. So manipulative altar calls, that can sit on the shelf. Church hurt can sit on the shelf. Church scandals can sit on the shelf. Childhood abuse can sit on the shelf. Those things do not necessarily threaten that belief. But when I realized that the Bible itself was saying some bad things, my shelf became shaky. I tried to stabilize it with Christian apologetics and a more loving, progressive form of Christianity. But when I started seeing the problems with Christian apologetics, the shelf started shaking again. And when I realized that the Bible was written and compiled by human beings, and that we have proof of contradictory translations, things being added and taken away from the Bible, translational errors, disputes between biblical manuscripts, my shelf broke. This information on my shelf contradicted that God was preserving his perfect word. I could no longer view the Bible as perfectly preserved or as the word of an all-powerful God. If God did not preserve a perfect copy of his holy book, how do we know which one to use, which set of contradicting manuscripts and translations to follow? Did you know that there are books of scripture that human beings decided not to include in the Christian canon of the Bible? Who decided that? Who decided what was getting put in the Bible? People. Like, we have no evidence that God did any of that. And there are different groups of Christians that include different books in their canon. Why wouldn't a perfect and all-knowing, all-powerful God preserve his Bible perfectly? Doesn't the Bible say God is not the author of confusion? Maybe it's because this God is not real. So if somebody asks me today, why are you an atheist? I typically respond with, I see no reason to believe that the Bible or any other religious text in existence is objectively true. I have no issue with people who want to believe it and they believe it out of faith. I can't do that. I require evidence, and there is no concrete proof that any God exists, so I do not believe in any God. It's that simple. There are a lot of misconceptions about what atheism actually is. No, I am not a Satan worshiper. Do you think that I believe in Satan if I don't believe that the book Satan comes from is true? Do you just see anybody in the world ever
I don't know
that
why they
believes
go to
differently than
that.
you?
They always go to, oh, you must worship Satan. It's like, who the fuck? I'm telling you guys, it's an illness. It's a mental illness. Okay, shelf break. What she got over here? It doesn't give me the... Let's just skip a little bit ahead. Is that about the channel? Okay. So let's go ahead and go back and let her finish.
No proof of divine inspiration anywhere in reality, and no proof of God. I found a lot of contradictions and inexcusable atrocities commanded by God himself. This book right here caused me to leave Christianity, and once I saw the issues with Christianity, I also saw issues with all the other world religions. There is no proof. If you give me the proof, I'll believe. But until that day, hey, I'm an atheist. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do about it? Right now, the channel is still in my religious upbringing portion of this timeline. But as I explain my upbringing, I am
that's
also
where she goes into the
deconstructing.
channel. So guys, yeah, tell me what you think about that. You know, my thing is, you know, just to share a bit of my kind of where I'm at now. You know, you can't put God... First of all, I don't even like using that term because it's just not... The problem with God is that when you say God, everybody has this mental image of a separate being floating somewhere in the sky. And that's immediately what everybody thinks when you say God, right? And so whenever I say, oh, there is, you know, there's you know, stuff for God, you can't take it, throw the idea out that there is this separate being, this separate creator, right? Throw that whole thing out because that's just not accurate. So for a while, I just adopted cosmic consciousness because that's what Einstein kind of, you know, just kind of explained it as, you know, Planck, you know, there's this this universal existence that is intelligence, right? And to me, when I say God, I'm not talking about this man floating up in the clouds. I'm talking about the magic of every atomic particle in existence and its organization in existence, right? So for instance, my body is 29, about to be back-breaking 30 years old, but every particle of my body has been around since the beginning of time, right? Every atom in my body, every atom in my skin, every photon of light that I'm made up of, every electron has been around since the beginning of the universe, right? So I am both in organization as John, 29 years old, but my existence is far longer and goes back to the very beginning of time, right? And so are you, and so is everybody else, and so is everything, right? We can take things that have existed for billions of years, and we can change the atomic structure of those things, and we can organize them in a way that's pleasing to the eyes, and we look at that and say, oh, that is something new. No, it's not. These atoms have been in this, not in this specific organization, but these atoms of existence is the beginning of time, and guess what? They will exist for the rest of time, right? And so that's my thing, is that whenever I refer to this cosmic consciousness, and I wouldn't even call it a cosmic consciousness. There is this connectedness of everything. And you can see that. I've been wanting to make a fucking series about it, but my list of shit to do just keeps fucking going. I'm going to do it. It'll get done. When I say it'll get done, it'll get done. Is it going to happen soon, quickly? Probably not. It's going to get done. But yeah, so that's kind of my belief of things. Whenever I was walking away from Christianity, I was having a chat with one of the previous people who had came on the channel, and he said something really, really kind of like, that I related to is, he said he wasn't necessarily mad at the idea that there was some sort of supreme, cosmic consciousness. He was mad at Christianity. And I was like, oh, I feel that. Because that was me. The reason why I walked my atheistic path is because Christianity is kind of fucking crazy. And, whenever I started seeing all the things that I was seeing and researching the things that I was researching, I'm going to do it. I promise I'm going to do it. It's going to happen soon. But I started researching the things that I was researching. That's where I was like, okay, and so I was like, well, maybe a God does exist. But then I was like, there's no fucking way that if a God did exist, it'd be this guy. Because this guy is batshit crazy. And he claims to be the best, most holy person on the planet. But I know a billion people who would act more civil than this guy. So, it was a whole thing. But anyways, guys, without further ado, at this point, it is 11 o'clock at night for me. Thank you so much for sticking around with me and enjoying the evening with me. I am probably, before I go to bed, I'm probably going to end up recording a second video. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I have a tendency of turning the brain off and saying stop. So we'll see where I get. But now it is kind of funny. Now that I've kind of like forced myself to stop working at past 9:30 at night, that tends to be, I'm like, maybe I record videos at 9:30 at night, Because that's just like when I, decided I'm going to stop dealing with bullshit. So anyways, I love you guys. And please, if, where are my little Delio Shazelios? Look at the button I did. Isn't that cool? I made that button happen. That was cool. You also want to see something cool? Boom. Fuego. Anyways, yeah, so, I wanted to pull up, hold on. Where is my little banner deal? There it is. Here it is. That's my email, desertspring111@gmail.com if you'd like to be a part of the show, if you'd like to interact with me, anything, you want to send me an email and just say, hey, buddy, you know, your hairstyle looks a little funny in that last video. Send me an email. I love interacting with you guys. And I'm sure there's going to be a point in time where I can't interact with everybody, and that's going to make me really sad. But I do love interacting with you guys and the people on this show. Sometimes they send me text messages and stuff like that, and that's always fun. So, okay, I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm going to go make the decision if I'm going to go to bed or if I'm going to continue to push on here. So, oh, I feel really tired. Oh, man, but I want to do it. Oh, I don't know. I'm always torn. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Have a good night. Good night.